TEKS 3C, linear key features. So the note section here, we're going to write out what x-intercepts are, y-intercepts, and the slope formula. So x-intercepts, remember, is when it crosses the x-axis, and we write x-intercepts as x, 0. And y-intercepts is when it crosses the y-axis. So it crosses the y-axis, and we write that as 0, y. And then lastly, the slope formula, if you remember, is m equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So we're going to be using these definitions to solve all these examples. So if we look at example 1, you'll see a graph. The first thing I want to look for is the y-intercept. So the y-intercept is right here where that line crosses the y-axis, and it crosses the y-axis. So this is the y-intercept, crosses the y-axis at 0, 5. And then if we also look at the x-axis, we notice that this line crosses here. So x-intercept at about 2.5, 0. Okay, so we found the y-intercept and the x-intercept. So now we need to find the slope. So remember, slope is rise over run. So I can pick any 2 points and work from there. So if I rise, I'm going to go up 1, 2, and I'm going to go left 1. Remember, when we go left or down, those are negative numbers. So remember, rise over run for graphs, this one is going to be 2 over negative 1. That's our slope. Okay, we're going to do the same thing for the second graph. First, I'm going to find the x and y intercepts. So the y-intercept on this graph is right here at negative 2, because that is where the line crosses the y-axis. And we write that as 0, negative 2. And then it also crosses the x-axis at 3, so this is the x-intercept, 3, 0. Okay. Then I'm going to find the slope doing rise over run. So if I do rise over run, I'm going up 1, 2, 3, 4. And I'm running to the right, which is positive 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that means my rise over run is 4 over 6, which we can reduce to 2 over 3. Okay, so that's how we find y-intercept, x-intercept, and slope on graphs. Okay, now let's look at tables. So all I want you to find is the y-intercept if you see it, and the x-intercept if you see it. So if you notice on the first table, we said that the y-intercept is when x is equal to 0. And on this table, x is equal to 0 when y is 14. So this is our y-intercept, 0, 14. Remember, our x-intercept is when y is equal to 0, but if we go down this graph, if we go down this table, we notice that there are no zeros, so that means there's no x-intercepts. So now we need to find the slope. So that means we have to use the slope formula, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Remember, we can choose any 2 points. I'm going to go ahead and choose these 2 points here, just because they're both positive and it's easier to work with. So I have x1, x2, y1, y2. So if I plug these into my equation, I'm going to get 20 minus 18 over 3 minus 2. And if I simplify that, 20 minus 18 is 2, and 3 minus 2 is 1, so that's my slope. Okay, we're going to do the same thing for the other graph, the other table. So remember, our y-intercept is when x is equal to 0. And we notice x is equal to 0 when y is 4, so this is my y-intercept at 0, 4. And also notice that in this case we have when y is equal to 0, so this is our x-intercept, negative 2, 0. Okay, so now we're going to find the slope using the slope formula, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. I'm going to go ahead and just choose the bottom 2 points. Remember, you can choose any 2 points you want. It does not matter. Okay, so I went ahead and labeled it x1, x2, y1, y2. And so if I plug it in, I get 12 minus 10 over 4 minus 3. 12 minus 10 is 2, and 4 minus 3 is 1. So my slope is the same as the last table, 2 over 1. Okay, so that's how we find y-intercept, x-intercept, and slope on tables. One last example is equations. So I'm going to look at the second equation first. Remember, our equations can be written as y equals mx plus b, where m is our slope and b is our y-intercept. So just by looking at this equation, we know that our slope is equal to -3, and our y-intercept is equal to 6, because that's where the m value is and that's where the b value is. However, if we look at the first equation, it's a little trickier because it is not in the form y equals mx plus b. It's actually in standard form, which is ax plus by equals c. So what we need to do is get y by itself. And if you guys remember from Unit 1, this is called literal equations. So if I'm going to get y by itself, the first thing I need to do is subtract 2x to the other side. When I subtract 2x, I notice that these terms are not similar, so I cannot combine them. So I have -1y is equal to -2x plus 2. They are not like terms, so I cannot combine them. Okay, my last step to get y by itself is to divide by -1. And when I divide by -1, I'm left with y equals 2x minus 2. So then from here, by using y equals mx plus b, I notice that my y-intercept, my slope is 2, because remember, slope is our m value, and my y-intercept is -2, because it's the b value.